The petrodollar, one currency to rule them all. There can be no question about the fact that the US is the world's leader in many fields, whether it be economy, military, tech, medicine, culture, you name it. But the reason as to why it is so far ahead of everyone else is not solely due to some special ingenuity unique to the American people. No, it's instead built on top of a rather sinister mechanism, the petrodollar. This system, forcefully imposed upon the world under the threat of extreme violence, has effectively enabled the US to siphon nearly all of the wealth generated by the rest of the world. This in turn has fueled their own progress at the expense of everyone else. What even is this petrodollar, you ask? Simple. It's an extortion racket that the US came up with. They basically held a gun at the heads of oil producing countries and said, you must sell oil only in that sweet, sweet American dollars, or else. If you want to know what happens or else, then look no further than what was done to Iraq and Libya. Saddam's Iraq defied the US's murderous gaze and was about to sell oil in euros, thus threatening the US dollar's throne as the world's most valuable currency. We, of course, know what happened next. Iraq was dismantled under the false pretext of having weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam was subsequently ousted from power and hanged on the day of Eid. Of course, we later found out that the whole excuse for that invasion was nothing but a filthy lie. But millions of innocent Iraqis were dead by then, and the groundwork was laid to keep that country destabilized for decades to come. Funny thing though, North Korea routinely tests nuclear weapons, and they pretty much make threats of dropping them on the US every other Tuesday. Does anyone have any clue as to why no one ever invades them? Crazy, huh? Libya, meanwhile, tried to ditch the US dollar in favor of a gold backed dinar, which would have torpedoed the US's value as the global currency. So, of course, the US and its lackeys in NATO ripped that country to shreds. Once the most affluent country in that region, Libya now exists only as a memory, a wasteland where roving bands of warring factions fight over scraps of land. As for what they did to Gaddafi, well, I can't even talk about that without this video getting age restricted. So use your imagination. So why is it that the US is so hyperprotective of the petrodollar? Why shed so much blood over some obscure economic deal that most people have not even heard of? Well, you see, the petrodollar allows the US to do something that no other country in the world can. It allows the US to export its inflation. Confused? Let me explain. You see, because oil is only allowed to be sold in US dollars, because otherwise Uncle Sam will kick down your door with the sacred message of democracy, it creates an artificial demand for US dollars on the global market as countries first have to buy dollars before they can buy oil. You know, the lifeblood of modern economies. This in turn drives the price of the US dollar to monolithic heights, giving the US an obscene amount of buying power over all other economies. They can also print as much money as they want to buy whatever they need, while passing on the bite of inflation to all the other countries. The dollar still falls in value, but the loss is divided among all of the players, not just the US. This is something that no other country in the world can do. And it is precisely this unfair advantage that has enabled America to become the superpower it is today. They can afford to spend more on their military than all of the other countries in the world combined because they're extorting the other nations to pay the bill. All of that brute strength then gets used to keep everybody else in line, or they suffer the consequences. But not all hope is lost. Emerging superpowers like China and Russia are doing everything in their power to climb out of this pit of death that the US has dug. Newly forged economic alliances centered around the global south are beginning to trade amongst themselves using their own currency while sidelining the US. This development has the US so upset that the new president elect Donald Trump even said in a recent tweet that he will be imposing a 100% tariff on Chinese goods coming into America if they so much as think about introducing a rival currency. You can tell from his completely rational and gentlemanly approach that he has clearly been grabbed in the most sensitive area. In the meantime, though, The world continues to suffer under the tyranny of US economic and military imperialism, where they have no choice but to trade using a currency that is not backed by gold, but by bombs. America, meanwhile, sanctions anyone and everyone that dares to do anything outside of their bidding, thus encroaching on other nations' sovereignty and increasing the world's revulsion towards them even further. Like all tyrants before them, they're failing to realize that their heavy handedness is only hastening their demise. I, for one, dearly hope that that day comes sooner rather than later. There is a certain promised land full of chosen people that have been propped up by the country of the stars and stripes. And they will have a lot to answer for when Big Daddy America implodes from a currency that has turned to dust.